Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm Highway, and I'm here to give you a... So what exactly is Android? Basically, my whole computer is dying. There you go. Ah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's an OS-based system based on the Linux kernel, and it runs on Java and XML. XML mainly on the front end, whereby you draw up your GUI and stuff, and Java on your back end. So that's what it doesn't really have like a MVC a strict MVC model like Rails on your own. Like you have your own depending on your structure. So basically, why Android? Android basically now has, as of 2014, actually has the largest market share. Even it has just recently the market share. So if you write an app, a lot of people who are going to download it, basically. So we are developing. So there are for Eclipse, so you can develop Android apps using the Eclipse IDE. And the other option is to use Android Studios, which is recently Google. Those I would say would have been super done. Android Studio. So using Eclipse, I would suggest you make the jump over to Android Studios. Give it a shot. Let's let the screen clear. Okay, so I'm going to use Android Studios for most of my development examples. So your workspace will look like this. So in Android Studios, basically everything is in one area. You just have your code. Below there is Logcat. Logcat is basically a debugger for Android. So whenever you plug in your phone, right, Logcat actually records down every single action or function that is running in your phone. So it logs down the process ID and all the other information. For example, when you want to log an error or something like console log on a JavaScript, like web development platform, for you will just put a log.d, and then it will just print out whatever thing in the logcat. So you'll just capture that information, and you can do filtering on the logcat level, so you can find out different kinds of errors, like is it a system level error or is it your app's error? You know, you can filter it out. The files are in there. So it's up to you how you want to do it. Yeah, it's going to take 10 million years for it to flip again. Okay, so let's look at the file structure next. So the file structure of an Android project, right? In my opinion, basically one is your SRC, contains all your Java codes, and the other one is your RES, which is your resources. So as you can, the Java codes that are kept in packages, so you can name the packages anything you like, just like how you would do in normal Java object-oriented programming. But the more important thing is the RES part. As you can see here, there's many files. So drawable is like where you put all your bitmaps, your images, your basically all your resources. But what is all these files here that says like HDPI, MDPI, XHDPI? So in Android, right, all the devices are actually grouped to certain metrics. So the metrics they use is actually called DPI, dots per inch. So that's how the resolution of the screen. So if like you were to say the most modern phone would be like, for example, the Sony Xperia Z2 or the HTC M8. Those will fall under like XHDPI because they are around 5" and their screen resolution is higher than 220. Then they will be categorized as XHDPI. But anything below like 220 will become LDPI and so on and so forth. So how do you create images based on these sizes? This is very important because when you start to scale your applications for different phone sizes, you also need to create the images. If not, if you create an image that's too small and then it appears on a very high resolution screen, it's going to appear pixelized. So what you want to do is actually, there's a ratio that you should follow. If I'm not wrong, it's depending on where you start from. I think if you put from MDPI to HDPI, it's about 1:3 ratio. So you have to like size the image accordingly. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the manifest. So basically in your Android application, right, all the information kept about your application, like permissions, your version code, the version of your application, all this information is stored in this one folder called the Android manifest. It's like something like your config file. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what the Android manifest is about. So let's go on to the coding part. So whenever you code the UI, let's start from the UI part. Basically, you house all your elements in these things called layouts. So there are two major layouts that you want to look at. One is called a linear layout, and the other is called a relative layout. So in most of the time, I would recommend using linear layouts. Why is that? Because if you have many screen sizes, right, linear layouts allow you to control each element by its weight. So for example, if I were to say, okay, this thing is supposed to take 20% of the screen. So you will put weight equals 0.2. That's 20% of the screen. So that's how you control the size of whatever things you need in weights. But the problem is you can't nest weights because of the way Android renders its elements. I don't want to go into detail with that at the moment because it's actually very complicated as to why they do that. But so far, if you are going to use weights to control your elements, just use it on the top level, and then after that, size it individually when it's placed inside its container. So the next part is relative layouts. Relative layouts, basically, you would lay out each element relative to each other. So you will have commands like to the left of or to at the bottom of certain elements. So like for example, if I were to lay out one button after another, I would say like button 2 is to the right of button 1, and then you just put it there. I'll show you some example codes. These two are not mutually exclusive, meaning you can actually house a relative layout inside a linear layout and vice versa. So I'm not sure if you can see code. Okay, I don't think you can see the code. Okay, can you all see the code? No. Yeah. Okay. So basically, your UI will all be written in XML. All you need to do is call the name of the element, and then pass in its variables. Basically, what arguments it has. So for example, the first one, I'll just read it out. It's like Android ID. So you are giving it a name. So when you code at the back end, you will call this name. I'll show you the sample code later. So as you can see here, in this linear layout, it contains a view. This view is actually 15% of whatever that linear layout consists of. So for example, if this linear layout is actually set to fill the parent, so it will be the same size as the parent, it will take up 15% of the parent's screen. So basically, if it fills the parent, so if this linear layout is the overall layout already, it will become the full screen of the phone. So 15% of the full screen of the phone will be taken up by that view right there. So that's how linear layout works. Relative layout, on the other hand, like I said, as you can see, the items here are actually placed, like you see, layout to the left of, so like you just position them relative to another element. That's how you position them. So it's like Lego, just slowly put them together. Okay, so inside the layouts, what would you put? There are things like buttons, text views, list views, grid views that you can use inside these layouts. But there's this element called the action bar. So in Android 3.2 and above, they've introduced this thing called the action bar, which is this, if you all use an Android phone before, there's this giant bar at the top there. It's like your menu. It replaces your menu. So like all your key functions should be there, your search should be there, sometimes your navigation should be there, like a back button or your navigation drawers. They will be all placed inside this thing called the action bar. So these elements, right, for example, the action bar is this thing up here. So when you click on, like, say, on the left side, the top left-hand side, it should do a certain action, depending on how you code it. Most people use a navigation drawer, so when you click it, it brings out a drawer with a lot of elements inside, so that it allows you to navigate through your app effectively. So, for example, in this layout over here, right, it is actually a giant linear layout, and inside this linear layout, there is like another linear layout, and each linear layout is like, one is vertical and one is horizontal. So when it's vertical, it positions items like this: 1, 2, 3. See, it's vertically stacked. But when you put it horizontal, it does it the other way: 1, 2, 3. So that's like how you combine the layouts to form what you want at the end. And the best part about using linear layout is that when you use, like, say, a bigger screen, it scales all the things for you properly. So if I were to use a tablet or something like that, it will look exactly the same. So for the other one, the other layout over here, it's the same. I'm still using a linear layout. However, there are some things that you should take a look at. Like, for example, this is a list view. So list views are very flexible because, like, you can, well, basically it's like how you use a list in HTML. It's the same thing as an unordered list or thing, but it's a lot harder to declare in Android because they require you to actually have a controller for it, like some form of a controller for it to render its view. So it becomes very weird, but you might want to read into that. So all these are housed inside these things called activities. So in activities, you would declare the activity will render the layout for you. So in an activity, you would have like on start, on create, all these event handlers, and you will do the relevant things to render out your UI. So in an activity, you can contain these things called fragments. So because Android has so many different kinds of screen sizes, like they do it for tablets, they do it for handphones, they use this very unique way to control the layout of your user interface. So you can break up your UI into little fragments. So in fragments, think of each fragment as a post-it note and your activity as the giant page. So the giant page is like your phone screen, and your fragments can literally be placed anywhere on that screen. So the fragments could be like, if say I was in a landscape view, it will take up, one fragment will take up the whole page. But if I were to put it in a portrait view, I can split up the activity into like 2 separate smaller fragments. So it depends on how you want to do it and how you want to lay out the thing. So that's how Android gives you the flexibility of making your UI nicer. But it's still a long way to go to make it something as good as what HTML does at the moment for responsive websites. Yeah. So the next part I want to go through is basically the activity lifecycle. In the activity lifecycle, basically these are the events that you want to look at. So like I said earlier, on create basically is where you want to declare all your user interface, where you want to hook up everything so that you can put the proper event handlers on the different kind of buttons or text fields. The rest are like, on pause is when you bring the activity, like you shut down the activity. So if you are going back to the home screen and your activity is running in the background, it'll be in the on pause state. But then when you bring it back up again to your main screen, like for example, you click the app again and it resumes the activity. That's when it calls the on resume function right here. So it pauses when you stop the activity, and well, it resumes when it starts. So these are like some code. I'm not sure if you can see it. Like, how do you go from one activity to another? So in the past, fragments didn't exist. So you literally have to have each page on an activity. So you would go from you will render one activity, you will close one activity and then render a new one by using all these methods. So what you see here is actually a button. And what the button does is it sends an intent to start an activity. So once it starts an activity, that new activity will be brought up and the previous activity will be stopped. But now with fragments, right, if within an activity, because you can have multiple fragments, you can actually change one part. Like for example, this activity contains like fragment 1, fragment 2, and fragment 3. If I only want to change fragment 1, I can run this set of code to just change fragment 1. So I don't need to refresh the whole view. I can just change one part of the whole view to make my application more fluid or dynamic. So actually, I wanted to go through like how you actually set up your on create function, but if you can't see the code here, it's maybe I'll just go through here. So basically, what you have here is where you actually hook up all your UI units. I'm not sure if you can see it clearly, but so basically, as you can see here, it's like if you want to hook up edit text, you just need to call the root view. Basically, it's what your layout was called, the ID of your layout. And then you will find the view by ID. So when you find the view by ID, it goes into your for example, your linear layout is your parent view, right? It goes into that parent view and searches through it to find that the similar name element in there. And then it hooks it up with this variable. So when it hooks it up with this variable, you can perform all sorts of actions on it. There are quite a lot of functions, so you may have to read the documentation on that. Don't worry, I'll go through. Well, I will give you the links to these websites. So last but not least, once you're done writing your application, you of course want to publish it. So where exactly do you go and publish it? First, you need to generate this thing called the APK. Basically, APK is like your .exe file on a Windows desktop. It's just the installer file. The beauty about Android versus iPhone, right, is that I can take this APK install, I can just give it to you and you can install it on your phone. You don't need to waste time. Whereas if you were like to be an iPhone developer, you would have to go through a lot of processes. No, you can't even deploy it on the phone unless you have a developer account, right? Yeah. So these are the two different steps. Okay, I'm not sure why the screen. Okay, just to show you. Yeah. So basically, what you do is you generate the APK first. So in Eclipse, you actually go to File and you export the project as an APK. But in Android Studio, since Android Studios is specifically for Android applications, it's a lot easier. You just click Build and then just generate the signed APK. Then it will ask you to generate a key with a password. And then once you're done with the key and the password, your APK will be placed in the folder that you actually designated it to be placed in. So once you're done with that, you will go to the Google Developer Console. So I've actually loaded, So this is the Google Developer Console. In the Google Developer Console is where you will upload your application and all your application information. So for example, if I were to add like a new app, I will click on the Add New App button. Then I'll just drag and drop the folder there. After that, it's just simply putting up all the relevant information like the UI pictures, your tablet pictures, and then a description. But things to take note of, when you publish an application, if you're going to make it free, right, it will be free forever. You cannot make it free, then later on change it to being paid. So what I suggest is you should create it as a paid application, unless you really want it to be free. You create it as a paid application, but you use in-app billing as a way to, generate revenue. Or if you don't want to generate revenue, you just don't put any in-app billing in it. Just let it be a paid application. But it gives you the flexibility of, later on if you want to add payment functions or whatever, it will be able to do it. Yes, as in it when I say in-app billing, right, it's technically $0, but you're still able to charge money. Yeah, so you can download it for free, but then when you're on the Google Play Store, it will actually warn you that, oh, this app has in-app billing, so there might be things you may have to buy inside the app. So that's all it does, but it's flexible. But end of the day, right, because Android is, you're not limited to just the Android marketplace. There are many other marketplaces like Amazon Marketplace or uh, I can't name the others. I can't remember their names, but there are a lot of them, and you can just upload your APK there, and they have different systems to handle payment. But for me, I feel Android is the best because, as in Google Play developer platform is the best because, I mean, every phone comes pre-installed with the Google Play uh, application for you to download the application. Oops. Yeah. So once you're done uploading everything, everything will be accessible online in a few hours. So it takes about a day for it to appear on the listings. After that, it's like you have to do your own SEO kind of management things to make it appear on the top few, which is not easy. They make you work very hard for the top few slots at the top. You need around 100 plus downloads, then you start moving up. You start moving up the list. I haven't really experimented with that because I think one of my apps that went that high before didn't, for some reason, I don't know why, I think the name's too long or something. Like it usually doesn't appear at the top. So maybe there's too many people publishing apps too fast. So lastly, these are the resources. To be honest, right, Android was something I self-learned. My course never taught me at all. So to be honest, right, their documentation is really good. Google has done a very good job in developing the documentation for Android. They even come up with a design guidelines so that if you're a bit lost as to what's the right way to show information, Android actually shows you a lot of examples. So that's under the design guidelines. Then lastly, like for example, if you want to make money off your app, right? Like what's the right way to list my app, or what's the best way to get my app visible to everybody? They even have guides for those. So you might want to check out their developers website. It's a very comprehensive resource on all these kind of things. So with that, I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, or if you start developing on Android and you're not sure about some things, you can feel free to ask me because that's what I normally do. Thanks. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Show you. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah, you can. I haven't tried removing, but you can. There is a remove button there. Yeah. But I'm not sure what's the scenario, the flow of what they do after you remove it. Yeah. Whether it will still stay there or what happens to your users after you remove the application, I'm not sure about that. Yeah. Maybe I'll let you know because I wrote one app for a client of mine before, and they're going to launch it. They're going to use it with their classes, so their class people are going to start downloading it a lot. So I'm just going to see like what's the behavior if like really thousands of people download your application, and then what will Google do? Does it push you up the listings? Do you have like a private app? Yes. So if you actually there's no such thing as a private app because like I said, if you really wanted it to be private, right, you just take the APK file and give it to the people that you want to install it. Yeah. I mean, in the scenario where it's your class, right? You're a company and you run classes. Yeah. And the tool that they're using on the phone is proprietary, and they want anyone else to download. Would it be made available? Can I actually adjust? I don't think there's such a in the Google App Store, right? The most you can do is actually just set by region. But in the alpha and beta testing phases, right? For example, I have one app here in alpha. You can actually set a certain Google Plus group to be able to download the application. So only that group of people can download, but then that's only in alpha and beta.
Just keep it in alpha.
Yeah, you could just keep it in alpha all the way if you wanted to. But I mean, the best way to do it would probably be just, have a place to download it and send everyone the link to download it, because it's an APK file at the end of the day. That's why Android has the flexibility to do whatever you want, because it's just a file. I can just pass you the file any way I want.
You could open the browser in your Android phone and download it.
Yes, you could do that. In fact, when I wrote application for my army unit, the way I distributed it was like I gave them a Dropbox link, because they didn't. I don't know lah. That's like the only way. They didn't want me to upload it to the Play Store. Then that was the only way I could distribute it to them, by just giving a Dropbox link. Yeah.
You have to check can download install from unknown sources. Is it?
Yes, you have to check that thing. Usually nowadays the phones, when you click on an unknown package, it just straight away just asks you if you are okay with installing it or not. Yeah.
You mentioned the in-app viewing, right?
Yeah.
So if you publish your app as a free app, is it free in-app?
No, it has to be declared straight away when you publish it. Yeah. So you have to straight away say, oh, I have a in-app billing app, but I have not. So when you create an in-app billing app, right? What happens is that you have a merchant's account on Google, and on your Google Play Developer Console, there'll be a new tab for you that says like what items you are selling in your application. So this works for games and all that. So you actually have a list of items that you'll be selling. So you can keep that list blank first. Right. Then there's nothing to buy. That kind of thing.
But when you publish your app, you have to publish it as a
you have to say. Because I really don't
understand.
Yeah, can be zero. Actually, I haven't tried it being zero. Yeah. There will be the disclaimer that this app has in-app billing services. Yeah, but I don't know what's their reasoning behind why you can't turn a free app into a paid app. Perhaps because of the users that have already downloaded the app, it might cause conflicts on their side. That might be the reason why they do it. Yeah, but that's how Android does it. I'm not sure about iOS because I've never really tried uploading an app to iOS yet.
You publish your app as free, right? Then advertisers can still use your app.
You're using AdMob or something, right? Don't know. Okay, so advertisers, if you want to put advertising in your app, right, it's actually just you just call the advertisers API on it, right? Inside the application, it's not part of the Google. Yeah, it's not part of the Google developer side. That's why a lot of free apps they just put in advertisements to earn a bit of revenue here and there. Yeah, it's just a view inside the application. That's all.
It's separate, like the revenue that you generate from that app.
Yeah.
The advertisement will be in a separate location.
Yeah, but Google has their own advertisement things that you can follow. I think it's called AdMob or something like that. Google AdMob. Yeah. So you can use their. Pardon?
You can still do it, even though you declare that your app is free.
Yes, you can still do it.
Because the user is
Yeah. Yeah.
How's the simulator? Because I remember.
Oh yes. Yeah, I didn't cover simulator. Yeah.
That was the thing that was holding up. Because it takes like 3 minutes just to.
Okay, so for the simulators, right? Okay, sorry, because Android really is very vast. I can't cover everything, but for simulators, actually you're wrong about the startup time. There is a way to set it to start up very quickly. In fact, you can start it up in less than a minute. Personally, I prefer testing it on an actual phone, but you have no choice but to start out an emulator. You need to go to your BIOS of your computer and enable virtualization. So once you enable virtualization, right, you'll be able to create the emulators in the CPU as an Intel Atom. So when you put it as an Intel Atom, or for some reason it boots up faster, I think it's because it has a similar architecture to your current CPU, so it doesn't really.
Because I remember when I was doing it was like years ago, 2.0.
Oh yeah, back in 2.0, no.
And it was an Eclipse, so.
Yeah. Back in 2.0, that didn't exist. The last time I did it before I entered army, I was also doing at 2.0. We didn't use emulators at all because for the GPS and all the other functions, right, it's very bad. It was very bad back then. So you literally have to use an actual phone to test a lot of the functions. But now it's a lot better. Both Eclipse and Android Studios actually share the same emulator. Yeah. So it's all bunched up in the Android development tools. So the key way to make it boot up fast is to switch it to a Intel processor instead of the ARM processor. Yeah. Yeah. So is there any other questions? No? Okay. So I guess that's it. Thanks. Okay, lunch.
Lunch!